INEC Chairman Professor Atairu Jega before the Senate reveals the Commission is still very prepared for the upcoming polls, and he explains the reasons for the postponement of the elections. He further demonstrated the use of the card reader to the senators. He explains that it takes about 30 seconds for a card reconfirmation at the polling units. INEC Chairman Professor Atairu Jega makes his way into the Senate chamber. The Senate invited him to clear the air on some worrying issues pertaining to INEC's preparedness for the upcoming general elections. There have been widespread reports of the inability of Nigerians to collect their voters' cards and the outstanding issue of the legality of the use of card readers for the elections. Professor Jega said INEC is not violating the Constitution by using card readers for the elections. He then demonstrated how the card readers would work.
You're finished? No.
Done with the demonstration, lawmakers grilled Professor Jega on several issues. They sought to know how reliable the card readers are and what other backup plans the Commission has put on ground in the event that the card readers malfunction on election day.
In the highly unlikely event that a card reader fails, we have enough spares to deploy before the end of the accreditation at 1 p.m. and then adjust the time to gain for lost time where or if a card reader has failed. If we cannot replace before the end of accreditation, then the election in that particular voting point would be postponed to the following day when a new card reader will be provided for the election.
Although Professor Jega was optimistic that INEC would take advantage of the postponement of the elections to ensure that everything is put in place, he admitted that there were still unresolved problems.
Secondly, with regards to the question you asked about outstanding production of PVCs, I don't lie, and I will acknowledge that as I speak with you, there are about 800 to 1 million cards yet to be produced.
The postponement of the elections is already a foregone issue, but that did not stop lawmakers from calling the attention of the INEC chairman to one nagging issue.
Come 28th of March and 11th of April, will you commit yourself to us and Nigerians about the sanctity of these dates?
It's a very difficult question to answer because, yes, let me land. I have said consistently that there are things under the control of an electoral commission. There are things that are not under the control of an electoral commission. For things that are under our control, we can give definite and categoric assurances. What is not under our control, it's futile, it's fruitless, it's useless to give a definite guarantee on them. So frankly, I think that question should be directed appropriately.
Section 49, subsection 1 says a person intending to vote with his voter's card shall present himself to a presiding officer at the polling unit in the constituency in which his name is registered with his voter's card. Subsection 2 says the presiding official shall, on being satisfied that the name of the person is on the register of voters, issue him a ballot paper and indicate on the register that the person has voted. My guest on the program again today tries to explain this section and if the use of the card reader does not contravene this section. Take a listen.
Usually, the usual Jega we know, it was calm, it was articulate, and he said what he wanted to say. Particularly when he insisted that there will be that the card readers will be used. I was happy with that because having postponed this election, if you now remove the card readers, for which so much money has been put in, and which is one of the major things that are putting up from INEC. If that had gone, it would have shaken the belief of some of us as to whether INEC will keep to the fundamentals they have put forward for the election. Because the card readers is what we have been told will help us know when everybody votes. That it sends an electronic signal to a control room. So if you snatch a ballot box, it will make no meaning. And when we now go to election petition tribunals, it is easier to prove whether there has been substantial non-compliance. So as a lawyer, I understand. I knew the effect of sustaining that card reader issue.
The Electoral Act says that you can't use electronic devices for election processes. This device, does it translate to an electronic device?
Yes, and yes, it's an electronic device, but when you look at when you are looking at a law, you look at the law and the spirit of the law. Every law has an intendment. When the Electoral Act talks about electronic devices, it's much more into voting. This is not a device for voting. This is a verification device. The PVC and the card reader is one component. It is something that validates the PVC. If we were talking about voting and a device is being used to facilitate voting, then it will obviously contravene the Electoral Act. But this is a failure I will ascribe to INEC, because it will create some opportunities for people to begin all kinds of interpretation. INEC ought to have ensured that the Electoral Act is amended in that respect, clarifying that it will exclude, obviously, card readers, because they know that card readers will be used. Well, having not done that, I still believe that it is not the intendment of the Electoral Act to rule out verification of the card. It is the voting, electronic voting in different devices that the Electoral Act is proposed to.
Now, I want to read section 49 of the Electoral Act to you. It says that that's for some of the issues discussed with Professor Jega. It says, a person intending to vote with his voter's card shall present himself to a presiding officer at the polling unit in the constituency in which his name is registered with his voter's card. The presiding officer, that's 2 now, shall, on being satisfied that the name of the person is on the register of voters, issue him a ballot paper and indicate on the register that the person has voted. This section does not factor in the PVC.
An amendment to clarify this point ought to have been made to the Electoral Act, when INEC knew that the card reader is a must use. Now, having this provision doesn't mean that, of course, it doesn't mean that there will be no rules by the electoral umpire. Remember that all these are in furtherance of the general duty of the electoral umpire to ensure that a credible election is done. And the Electoral Act will not, for example, write down everything that will be done in the election. I'll give you an example. The Electoral Act does not say how many days the PVC should be distributed. It's been shifted several times. In fact, the Electoral Act doesn't say if you want to postpone the election, this is the day to postpone it. It only says that it should be not later than 30 days to the election. The electoral umpire has some areas to play around to ensure that the the election is free, credible, and clear and fair. So one point I'm making is a literal reading of that section will suggest that there will be no card reader.
Yes.
But
For interpretation.
yes, but what I'm saying is that the card readers have become inevitable, and the intention of the card reader does not really contradict the entire section, the entire electoral act. His duty is to prevent, so to speak, electoral manipulation, and if we stretch the literal interpretation of those sections, you remove the card reader. When you remove the card reader, it will have to affect the PVC, because without the card reader, the PVC is just as good as the TVC.
Professor Jega says that he cannot guarantee that the elections will hold after this 6 weeks extension, that it's the security agencies that can guarantee that. Are you worried about this statement?
As we go through more elections, we will begin to fashion out a more perfect electoral process for the country. That's why I urge every Nigerian to be patient with the system so that we can go through the system and continue to improve. Prior to the 2015 elections, I'm sure not many Nigerians had placed so much weight on the military component in deciding whether election should hold or not. But today we're here. We now know that when we're asking for an electoral date, we should be asking the military, are you ready to provide security?
Talking about the military, I know that the Court of Appeal in MD Yusuf against Obasanjo says that the military should not be a part of the elections.
The decision is not a simple one, having regard to what the situation is in the country. I as a lawyer, I believe that the position of the law as stated by the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal will remain the law until they change it. Security is an essential part of the entire process. So, when the Supreme Court says that the army should not be used, I don't understand them to say that the army should not do their normal duties. Like when on days of election, as elections come close, you see military checkpoints. Those are some regular jobs they do. What is being said is, you don't need to bring the army to the polling units to go and influence what is happening there. Because the mere presence of an army man can scare people from voting. Like I remember what I said earlier, that every law, every judgment has a reason. It has something it is intended to cure. What it's intended to cure is not that, take what's happening in the northeast, for example. If the army is not there, there will be no election. Boko Haram can just come and roll unchallenged. It is difficult when the army is there. Talk less of when they are not there. But the government should understand what the court is talking about. The court is saying, don't come and you turn this to a military affair. It's not a military affair. It's a civil thing. But the army should play their normal role of ensuring that the election is peaceful.
With that, we say thank you so much for being a part of the program. My name is Victoria Ido. I'd like to hear from you. Please send your comments to the address on your screen. Until I see you again next week, please stay away from trouble.